Her lips were against my ear when she told me about him. The husband I'd never seen, never heard mentioned in all our stolen afternoons together. Her voice was honey and mischief, like she was sharing the world's most delicious secret. "He's coming home tonight," she whispered, her fingers trailing down my arm. "And I want him to meet you." I should have left right then. Should have grabbed my keys, my dignity, my common sense. Instead, I laughed. Because Olivia had this way of making everything sound like a game, even the dangerous things, especially the dangerous things. "You're kidding," I said, but my voice came out smaller than I meant it to. She was pressed so close I could smell her perfume, that intoxicating blend of jasmine and something darker I could never name. "Am I?" She pulled back just enough to look at me, those green eyes dancing with something that made my stomach flip. "Stay for dinner, please. I promise it'll be interesting." The word hung between us like a challenge. I knew I should ask what she meant, knew I should demand answers about why she'd never mentioned being married, why she'd let me fall for her, why she was looking at me like she wanted to devour me and offer me as a gift at the same time. But before I could form the words, keys jingled in the front door. My heart stopped, because this wasn't supposed to happen. Olivia and I, we had our rules, our careful boundaries. Her apartment was our sanctuary, our secret world where nothing else existed. The door opened with a soft click that sounded like thunder. And there he was. Tall, dark hair, eyes that took in the scene with the calm of someone who'd been expecting exactly this. He didn't look surprised to find his wife curled up next to another woman on the couch. Didn't look angry or confused or hurt. He looked pleased. "David," Olivia said, her voice warm with affection. "Meet the woman I've been telling you about." Telling him about? The words echoed in my head as I tried to process what was happening. How long had she been talking about me? What exactly had she said? David stepped into the living room, his presence filling the space in a way that made me hyper-aware of everything. The way Olivia's hand was still resting on my thigh, the way my dress had ridden up, the way he was looking at me like he was solving a puzzle he'd been working on for months. "So, you're Madison," he said, and his voice was velvet over steel. "Olivia's told me so much about you." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out, because Olivia was watching me with this expression of pure anticipation, like she was waiting for me to catch up to whatever game we were all playing. I should go," I finally managed, starting to stand. "Should you?" David asked, and something in his tone made me freeze halfway up. Olivia's been looking forward to this for weeks. Weeks. The word hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't spontaneous. This wasn't an accident. Olivia had been planning this moment, orchestrating it, and I'd walked right into her web without even knowing I was prey. Now, if you've ever found yourself in a situation where everything you thought you knew suddenly shifted beneath your feet, where the person you trusted most revealed they'd been keeping secrets that changed everything, then you understand the vertigo I felt in that moment, the way reality seemed to tilt sideways, leaving you grasping for something solid to hold on to. And if you're watching this and wondering how far this rabbit hole goes, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, because this story is just getting started. And I have a feeling you're going to want to stick around to see how deep Olivia's carefully laid trap really went. Hit that like button if you're already hooked, and subscribe to join our community of people who understand that the most beautiful stories are often the most complicated ones. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Olivia was already moving, rising from the couch with fluid grace, her hand catching mine before I could pull away completely. "Don't go," she said, and there was something in her voice I'd never heard before. Not pleading exactly, more like certainty. Like she knew I wouldn't leave, couldn't leave, even if every rational part of my brain was screaming at me to run. David hadn't moved from his spot by the door, but somehow he felt closer, like the room had shrunk around us. "Olivia's right," he said quietly. "We've been hoping you'd stay." We. The pronoun landed between us like a stone dropped in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I understood about my relationship with Olivia. Because apparently, it had never been just about us. He'd been there all along, a silent presence in our stolen moments, our whispered confessions, our careful dance around feelings we were both too scared to name. "I don't understand," I whispered, though part of me was beginning to. Olivia's thumb traced over my knuckles, that familiar touch that never failed to make me melt. "You don't have to understand," she said. "You just have to feel." And God help me, I was feeling everything. The warmth of her hand in mine, the weight of David's gaze, the pulse of something electric and dangerous and absolutely terrifying humming through the room. "Olivia," I started, but she shook her head. "Just stay," she said, and her free hand came up to cup my face. "Stay for dinner. Stay to see what this could be. Stay because..." She paused, her eyes searching mine. "Because you want to." The terrible thing was, she was right. Despite the confusion, despite the fear, despite every warning bell going off in my head, I wanted to stay. Wanted to see where this led, what secrets she'd unveil next, how far down this particular rabbit hole went. David was still watching us, and when I finally worked up the courage to meet his eyes, I saw something there that made my knees weak. Not jealousy or possessiveness, but something warmer. Something that looked almost like gratitude. "She talks about you constantly," he said, and there was fondness in his voice that caught me off guard. "Madison this, Madison that. Madison would love this book. Madison has the most beautiful laugh. Madison makes the best coffee." He smiled and it transformed his entire face. I was starting to get jealous until I realized what she was really doing. What was she doing? I asked, though I was afraid of the answer. "Building a bridge," he said simply, "between her world and mine. Between what she wanted and what she was afraid to ask for." Olivia's hand tightened on mine, and when I looked at her, there were tears in her eyes. Real tears, not the manipulative kind she sometimes used to get her way. These were vulnerable, terrified, hopeful tears. "I've never wanted anything as much as I want this. Both of you, together. I know it's crazy, I know it's complicated, but..." "It's not crazy," David interrupted gently, taking a step closer to us. "Different, maybe. Unconventional. But not crazy." I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss that was either going to destroy me or transform me completely. There was no middle ground, no safe option, no way to dip a toe in and test the waters. It was all or nothing. Stay or go. Trust or run. Olivia was still crying, still holding my hand like a lifeline, still looking at me with those eyes that had haunted my dreams for months. And David was there, solid and calm, and somehow making this impossible situation feel almost possible. "What happens if I stay?" I asked, the words barely audible. Olivia's smile was radiant, even through her tears. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I know what happens if you go. And I can't lose you, Madison, not when we're this close to something real." The room fell silent, except for the sound of our breathing, three people suspended in a moment that would change everything. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me, the magnitude of what they were asking. But more than that, I could feel the truth of what I wanted burning bright and terrifying in my chest. I wanted to stay. I stayed. The word left my lips like a confession, like surrender, like the first domino falling in a chain that would reshape everything I thought I knew about love. "Okay," I whispered, and Olivia's face lit up like sunrise. David moved then, finally stepping fully into the room, and I realized he'd been giving us space to choose, giving me space to decide without the pressure of his presence clouding my judgment. But now that the decision was made, he was here, real and solid, and somehow both intimidating and comforting at once. "Thank you," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice caught me off guard, "for trusting us with this." Olivia was still holding my hand, her grip gentle but firm, like she was afraid I might change my mind and bolt for the door. Should we have dinner first?" she asked, and there was something almost shy in her voice that I'd never heard before. It struck me then how nervous she was, how much this moment meant to her. She'd orchestrated this carefully, yes, but that didn't mean she wasn't terrified of how it would unfold. "Dinner sounds good," I said, because I needed time to process what was happening, needed to understand the dynamics at play, the unspoken rules of whatever this was becoming. The kitchen was warm and filled with the scent of something delicious simmering on the stove. David moved around the space with easy familiarity, pulling down plates, opening wine, his movements economical and sure. Olivia stayed close to me, her hand finding mine whenever we were within reach, like she was tethering me to this moment, this choice, this new reality we were all stepping into. "How long have you two been married?" I asked as David poured wine into 3 glasses. 6 years, Olivia answered, accepting her glass with a grateful smile. "But we've been talking about this for almost 2. "This?" I repeated, taking a sip of wine that tasted like summer and starlight. David and Olivia exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that long married couples perfect. It was Olivia who spoke first. "The idea of sharing our life with someone else, someone who could love us both, who we could both love." She paused, her cheeks flushing pink. "Someone like you." The wine turned to honey on my tongue. "Someone like me?" "Not someone like you," David corrected gently, leaning against the counter with his glass cradled in both hands. "It was always going to be you, Madison. From the moment Olivia came home talking about the woman who made her laugh until her sides hurt, who challenged her ideas, who saw through all her carefully constructed walls to the person underneath." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "She talked about me?" "Constantly," he said with a smile. At first, I thought she had a crush. Then I realized it was deeper than that. She was falling in love. Really falling. For the first time since we met. But she's married to you, I protested, the logical part of my brain struggling to catch up. Yes, Olivia said simply. And I love him completely. But love isn't finite, Madison. It doesn't run out when you give it to more than one person. It grows. The concept was so foreign to everything I'd been taught about relationships, about commitment, about the proper way to love someone. But sitting here, watching the easy affection between them, seeing the way they both looked at me with such warmth and hope, it didn't feel wrong. It felt revolutionary. What would this look like? I asked, surprising myself with the question. If we, what would we be? Whatever we want to be, David said. There's no handbook for this, no predetermined roles. We'd figure it out as we go. Together, Olivia added, reaching across the small space to touch my face. All of us, together. The timer on the stove chimed, breaking the intensity of the moment. David moved to check whatever was in the oven, the domestic normalcy of the action somehow making everything feel more real. We ate dinner at their small dining table, conversation flowing easier than I'd expected. David was funny, I discovered, with a dry sense of humor that complemented Olivia's more playful nature perfectly. They asked about my work, my family, my dreams, like they were collecting pieces of me to add to their shared life. And slowly, gradually, I began to relax. I have to ask, I said, as David cleared our plates, why me? Why not someone you met together? Someone who knew what they were signing up for from the beginning. Olivia's smile was soft, almost sad. Because love doesn't work that way. You can't manufacture it, can't force it to happen on schedule or with the right person at the right time. She paused, her fingers tracing patterns on the tablecloth. I felt for you completely by accident, Madison. And when I realized what was happening, I panicked. Panicked how? I thought I had to choose between you and David, between the life I'd built and the feelings I couldn't ignore. I was ready to tear myself in half rather than hurt either of you. David returned to the table then, sliding back into his chair with fluid grace. That's when we had the hardest conversation of our marriage about what love means, what commitment looks like, what we were willing to risk for happiness. And what did you decide? That love isn't ownership, Olivia said. It's about wanting someone to be happy, even if that happiness is complicated, even if it challenges everything you thought you knew about yourself. I stared at her. This woman who had turned my world upside down without even trying, who was now offering me something I'd never dared to dream of. And you? I asked. David, how do you feel about all this? His smile was gentle, understanding. Grateful, he said simply. Olivia's been different these past few months. Lighter. More herself than I've seen her in years. And if you're the reason for that, if you make her happy, then I can't help but care about you too. The words settled over me like a warm blanket, wrapping around fears I didn't even know I was carrying. This wasn't about replacing anyone or being a temporary distraction. This was about addition, not subtraction. About love multiplying instead of dividing. "I'm scared," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "Good," Olivia said immediately. "If you weren't scared, it wouldn't matter. Fear means it's real, Madison. It means it's worth the risk." David nodded in agreement. "We're scared too. This isn't exactly charted territory for any of us. But we're willing to be scared together," Olivia added, reaching for my hand across the table. "If you are." I looked at our joined hands, then up at David, who was watching us with such tenderness it made my chest ache. Then back at Olivia, whose eyes held promises and possibilities and a future I'd never allowed myself to imagine. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Olivia said, standing and pulling me with her, "we stop talking and start feeling." She led me to the living room, David following behind us, and I realized we were crossing another threshold, moving from theoretical to actual, from conversation to experience. Olivia turned to face me, her hands coming up to frame my face, and for a moment, we just looked at each other. Really looked. Seeing each other clearly for the first time without secrets or barriers between us. "Are you sure?" she whispered. I thought about all the reasons I should say no, about societal expectations and conventional relationships and the safe, predictable life I'd been living before Olivia crashed into it like a beautiful hurricane. Then I thought about the way she made me laugh, the way she challenged me to be braver, the way she saw parts of me I'd kept hidden from everyone else. I thought about David's gentle strength, his willingness to open his heart and his home to someone he barely knew because it would make his wife happy. I thought about love as multiplication instead of division, about happiness as something to be shared rather than hoarded, about the possibility of being fully myself with not just one person, but two. "Yes," I said, and the word felt like coming home. Olivia's smile was radiant as she leaned in to kiss me, soft and sweet and filled with promise. And when she pulled back, David was there beside us, his presence no longer intimidating, but completing something I hadn't known was incomplete. "Welcome to our life, Madison," he said quietly. And as Olivia's arms came around me, as David's hand settled warm and sure on my shoulder, I realized I wasn't staying for dinner. I was staying for everything that came after. If you're still here, then you are truly part of the heartbeat of this channel. I appreciate you more than I can say. The best way you can help us keep telling these stories is by sharing them on Facebook with your groups, in your communities, and on WhatsApp with friends and family. Think of it as passing on a gift, a story that might comfort someone, inspire someone, or simply brighten their day. Your shares are powerful, and with them, you help us grow this family into something even more beautiful. Thank you for being here, and thank you for believing in what we're building together. Back to our story. The morning light was different. I woke up tangled in sheets that smelled like jasmine and cedar. My body curved against Olivia's warmth, David's arm draped protectively over both of us. For a moment, I lay perfectly still, afraid that moving would shatter whatever spell had been cast the night before. But it didn't. Instead, I felt complete, like a puzzle piece that had finally found its proper place after years of trying to fit into spaces that were almost right, but never quite perfect. Olivia stirred beside me, her eyes fluttering open to meet mine. Her smile was soft, unguarded, radiating a contentment I'd never seen on her face before. "Hi," she whispered, her voice husky with sleep. "Hi yourself," I whispered back, marveling at how natural this felt. How right. David was already awake, I realized, his breathing too steady for sleep. His arm tightened slightly around us, a gentle squeeze that spoke of protection and possession and profound gratitude all at once. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured against my shoulder, his lips brushing my skin with casual intimacy that should have felt foreign, but instead felt like coming home. I'd expected awkwardness this morning, expected the harsh light of day to reveal the madness of what we'd done, the impossibility of what we were trying to build. Instead, everything felt inevitable, like we'd simply acknowledged what had always been true. I started, then trailed off because I didn't actually know what I should do. Go home, pretend this never happened, slip back into my old life like nothing had changed. "Stay," Olivia said immediately, her hand finding mine under the covers. "Please, we have so much to talk about." David propped himself up on his elbow, looking down at both of us with eyes that held such tenderness. It made my chest ache. "Only if you want to," he said. "No pressure, no expectations. Just if you want to explore what this could be, we're here." I thought about my empty apartment across town, my predictable routine, my safe, controlled life that suddenly felt like a cage I'd locked myself into. And then I thought about the way they'd looked at me last night, like I was precious, like I was chosen, like I was exactly what they'd been missing without even knowing it. "What would exploring look like?" I asked. Olivia sat up, pulling the sheet with her, her hair tumbling around her shoulders like spun gold. "Honestly, I have no idea. We'd be making it up as we go." "Together," David added, sitting up as well. "All of us, equal partners in figuring this out." The word partners sent a thrill through me that I tried to ignore. It was too soon for that kind of thinking, too dangerous to let myself believe this could be permanent. But the hope was already taking root, stubborn and bright and impossible to ignore. "I'm terrified," I admitted. "So are we," David said simply. "But fear isn't always a warning, Madison. Sometimes it's just your heart recognizing something precious enough to protect." We spent the morning in bed, talking about everything and nothing, about boundaries and expectations and dreams we'd never shared with anyone else, about the logistics of 3 lives intertwining and the emotional landscape of loving more than one person completely. It should have been overwhelming, but instead it felt like the most natural conversation in the world, like we were archaeologists uncovering something that had been buried but never lost, something that had been waiting patiently for us to find it. Around noon, David made coffee and Olivia cooked breakfast, and I watched them move around each other in the kitchen with the easy choreography of years together. But instead of feeling like an outsider looking in, I felt like I was seeing my future unfold before me. "Can I ask you something?" I said as we sat around their small table, sharing pancakes and stolen glances and comfortable silences. "Anything," Olivia said immediately. "Why did you wait so long to tell me about David? Why all the secrecy?" Olivia's smile was rueful. "Because I was terrified you'd run. Because what we were building felt so precious and fragile. And I was afraid that introducing the complexity of David would shatter it before it had a chance to grow. And because," David added, refilling my coffee cup with domestic ease, "we needed to be sure. About our feelings, about what we were willing to risk, about whether this was something we could actually handle emotionally. "Are you sure now?" I asked. They looked at each other, another one of those wordless communications passing between them, before turning back to me with identical expressions of certainty. "Completely," Olivia said. "Absolutely," David agreed. "Are you?" I thought about the question seriously, examining my feelings from every angle. The fear was still there, bright and sharp and undeniable, but underneath it was something stronger, something that felt like truth, distilled to its purest form. "I think so," I said. "I think I want to try." The smile that spread across Olivia's face was radiant. David's expression softened into something that looked like relief mixed with joy, mixed with profound gratitude. "Then we try," he said simply. "One day at a time, one conversation at a time, one feeling at a time." The afternoon dissolved into lazy intimacy, the kind of comfortable closeness that usually took months to develop but felt natural and earned between us. We watched movies curled up on their couch, shared stories from our childhoods, debated everything from politics to poetry with the passionate intensity of people who genuinely cared about each other's thoughts. As evening approached, I knew I needed to go home eventually, needed space to process what had happened, needed space to think and breathe and figure out what this meant for my life going forward. But I also knew I'd be back. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, but definitely back, because whatever this was, whatever we were building, it felt too precious to abandon. "Will you think about it?" Olivia asked as I gathered my things, her voice carefully neutral but her eyes hopeful. "About what we talked about?" "I don't think I'll be able to think about anything else," I admitted. David appeared beside us with a piece of paper in his hand. "My number," he explained, offering it to me, "in case you have questions or just want to talk. No pressure, just if you need us, we're here." I took the paper, our fingers brushing in the exchange, and felt that now familiar spark of connection. "Thank you," I said, "for everything, for trusting me with this, for being patient with my fears, for showing me that love doesn't have to be small or safe or conventional to be real." Olivia stepped forward and kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When she pulled back, David was there, his hand cupping my cheek as he leaned in to press his lips to mine with gentle reverence. "Drive safely," he murmured against my lips. "Text when you get home so we know you're okay." The simple domestic concern in his voice nearly undone me. When was the last time someone worried about my drive home? When was the last time I felt this cared for, this valued, this completely seen? I drove home in a daze, my mind replaying every moment of the past 24 hours, the confession, the revelation, the careful negotiations of three hearts learning to beat in rhythm together. The morning light on their faces, the easy way they'd included me in their routines, the growing certainty that this wasn't just a beautiful mistake, but the beginning of something extraordinary. My apartment felt strange when I walked in, like I was visiting someone else's life. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but I was completely changed. The woman who'd walked out yesterday morning had been carrying the weight of unrequited love and impossible longing. The woman who'd returned was carrying the hope of something she'd never dared to dream of. I texted David as promised, "Home safe. Thank you for today, for everything." His response came immediately. "Thank you for staying, for being brave enough to try." Then Olivia, missing you already. Sweet dreams, beautiful. I stared at my phone, at these messages from two people who'd somehow become essential to my happiness in the space of a single day, and felt tears prick at my eyes. Happy tears, grateful tears, overwhelmed by possibility tears. The next few weeks were a careful dance of discovery. Coffee dates that became dinners, dinners that became sleepovers, sleepovers that became weekends where I forgot I had my own apartment. Slowly, carefully, we wove our lives together, learning each other's rhythms and needs and boundaries. There were challenges, of course, moments of jealousy that we had to navigate with patience and honesty, difficult conversations about expectations and fears, and the practical realities of loving unconventionally. Questions from friends and family that required careful answers and sometimes uncomfortable truths. But for every challenge, there were a dozen moments of pure joy. Olivia's laugh when David and I ganged up on her during game nights. The way David's eyes lit up when he came home to find both of us cooking dinner together. The profound intimacy of three people choosing each other daily, deliberately, completely. 6 months later, I gave up my apartment lease. A year later, we started talking about making it official somehow, about commitment ceremonies and shared bank accounts and all the ways we could declare our love to the world, even if the world didn't quite know what to do with us. 2 years later, I can't imagine my life any other way. Because love, it turns out, isn't finite. It's not a pie that gets smaller when you share it. It's more like a flame that grows brighter when it meets other flames. More beautiful and warming and illuminating than any single light could ever be. Some nights, I lie in bed between them and think about the woman I used to be. The one who thought love had to be safe and simple and socially acceptable to be real. The one who would have run from this kind of complexity, this kind of beautiful risk. I'm grateful she was brave enough to stay. Grateful she trusted Olivia's whispered invitation and David's gentle certainty and her own heart's wild, impossible hope. Because crossing that doorway didn't just change my relationship status. It changed everything about who I am and what I believe love can be. And I've never looked back. Have you ever stood at the edge of something that could either destroy your carefully constructed life or transform it into something more beautiful than you'd ever imagined? Have you ever had to choose between safety and the kind of love that demands everything from you? Tell me in the comments what choice you would have made. Because I have a feeling some of you understand exactly what it feels like to stand at that doorway, heart pounding, knowing that whatever you choose will change everything forever. Thank you for watching this story till the end. Your support means everything to our growing community of people who believe in the power of authentic, complicated, transformative love stories. Subscribe to this channel and stay tuned for more daily stories that explore the complexities, the beautiful, impossible ways we find each other and choose each other and become more than we ever thought possible. See you in our next story.